Hi, good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone here. I'll be talking about advancing innovative diagnostics for global health. And although I focus a lot on low and middle income countries, which I'll refer to as LMICs, post-COVID, what I'm talking about here is equally relevant to looking at pandemic preparedness, which is quite a big topic of discussion currently for future pandemics. And that's, in the news recently, one's talked about mpox or avian flu. So what I'm talking about here and the criteria I'll talk about for innovative diagnostics and what's required are equally relevant to pandemic preparedness and to many products that one would want to get into high-income countries. And that's where one is looking for a fast intervention where frequent testing is required. And if you want frequent testing, you've got to have affordable testing. And so most of the concepts I'm talking about here are relevant to all three of those areas. And what I think is that this community in particular can play quite a big role in actually getting to that point of having these diagnostics in place. So while you listen to what I'm saying, think about where you might be able to play a role, because this is really just a challenge to the community. Sorry, this is not. All right, so if I look at the classification for low and middle income countries, it comes from the World Bank and it's based on income levels of populations that live in the countries. And this is just to give you an early indication of what it looked like in 1992 and then what it looked like 30 years later. And you can see that the purple areas, which are low, middle income and low income, are still quite substantial and focused quite a lot within Africa, but also across Asia. So in terms of testing and where it's most required, if one looks at HIV as a case and the AIDS pandemic, the WHO has set, and the United Nations have set these HIV targets called the 95-95-95 targets. A few years ago, they were called the 90-90-90 targets. And essentially, testing plays a role in two of these. It plays a role in the first target, so that 95% of people living with HIV know what their status is. And then it plays quite an important role in the third target, so people on treatment have a suppressed viral load and essentially can carry on with a normal life. The first one is well addressed by current tests in the market, and those are lateral flow tests, and those are produced in their tens of millions. And so excellent progress has been made. The third one requires what's called a molecular test, and for that there still are no real low-cost and readily distributable tests. So most of that is still done in central laboratories. If one looks at TB as another prime case in LMICs, and without me going through all the slides, I've put quite a lot of detail in the slides so that people can see it afterwards, but I'll skip through some of the detail. But really, coverage of these tests will need to double in order to meet the targets that have been set for tuberculosis. And currently, there are tests that are done which are near what are classified as near point of care, but those tests require quite a heavy equipment load, and they required quite a large skilled base of operators and things like power in the facilities where they're used. And then just generally, where tests are required, and I've already talked sort of in the infectious disease areas, but obviously environmental testing, COVID, we know in COVID how many hundreds or billions of lateral flow tests were used, and equally hundreds of millions of PCR tests were done. And there were programs that were started by, for instance, the WHO with the ACT-A program, which was accelerated COVID testing. So there were many programs to look at finding a way to distribute these tests more equitably across the globe. Then if one looks at the general area of One Health, and that's where one's looking at the environment and animal health together with human health, there are many, many of these diseases which are now crossover diseases from animals to humans. And so I've listed some of those, but one can also then start looking at soil quality, looking at, for instance, minerals, phosphates, potassium, whatever it is in the soil, looking at crop quality, looking at vaccine integrity. So that's concerned with looking at whether a vaccine that's about to be used whether it's in animals